You can sleep with anyone you want. I don't care." She said it like she was ordering takeout, tossing the words across the kitchen island with a casual shrug and that infuriating little smirk she wore when she thought she was being clever. That smirk. I used to love it. Now it just pissed me off. It was a Sunday morning. Sunlight streamed through the windows, lighting up the granite countertop and our untouched breakfast. My wife stood barefoot, sipping her smoothie, hair tied up like she'd just rolled out of bed, even though the eyeliner was still perfect from the night before. She was in one of her workout outfits, black leggings and a tight gray top that made her breasts look a little too perfect for a lazy Sunday. She never wore that for me anymore. I had just asked her, half joking, I thought, about this new guy she kept texting. "Liam, from yoga," she'd said once, like I was supposed to know who that was. Today, I just asked, should I be worried? Her response was that line. That little dare. Delivered with a sip of her kale smoothie and a flick of her phone screen. It could have ended there. I could have rolled my eyes and laughed it off. Called her bluff. But something inside me cracked instead. The words didn't bounce off me like she'd hoped. They sunk in, rooted, because there was someone. Someone I hadn't thought about in years. Someone I shouldn't have thought about in years. Her mother. Yeah, I know how that sounds. But this isn't a fantasy. This is me laying it bare. Long before my wife and I ever crossed paths, her mother, Elena, was a presence in my life. Not officially, not romantically. We met once, fleetingly, at an art exhibit I'd been dragged to by a mutual friend. I didn't even know who she was at the time. She was just this magnetic woman in her early 40s. Black hair swept back, red lips, emerald dress that clung to her in all the ways you remember without wanting to. We ended up talking, laughing, drinking wine that was too expensive for either of us to afford. And at some point, it happened, a kiss. Just one. Deep and spontaneous and wrong. So wrong. She'd pulled away, breathless, eyes wide, and whispered, "This can't happen," and disappeared before I could even ask her name. Life went on. I met Chloe, her daughter, a few months later, completely unaware of the connection until Elena walked into our first Thanksgiving dinner. The look on her face when we saw each other again, I've never forgotten it. That was over 7 years ago. We buried that night like a body. Never spoke of it. Pretended. She became mom, and I played the doting son-in-law. But now, standing in my kitchen, hearing my wife hand me a dare she thought was harmless, my mind didn't go to a coworker, a bar hookup, or some faceless affair. It went straight to her. Elena. I didn't respond right away. I just stared at Chloe, my wife, still smug, still amused, waiting for me to react. Maybe she thought I'd flinch, beg, defend myself. Instead, I finished my coffee, set the mug down, and said, "Okay." She blinked. "Okay what?" "You don't care if I sleep with someone else?" She rolled her eyes. "Don't twist it, Mark. I just mean, do what you want. I'm not your keeper." "But you said it. Out loud. I just want to make sure we're clear." "I mean it," she said, crossing her arms. "You've been sulking for months. If you think some other woman's going to fix you, be my guest." I didn't sulk. I stewed. There's a difference. Sulking is for kids. Stewing is when your wife stops touching you. When she spends more time on Instagram than looking at your face. When her phone starts living face down on the nightstand and her gym routine becomes sacred enough to cancel dinner plans for. That's stewing. She turned away and started rinsing out her blender, clearly bored with the conversation. I stood there a second longer, watching her, remembering Elena's laugh. That fire in her eyes. The way she used to lean in when she talked like you were the only person in the room. Chloe had never looked at me that way. Not once. Something about the comparison made me feel like I'd already made the decision. Not consciously, not with a plan. But the moment Chloe tossed that dare into the air, my mind reached back and grabbed onto a spark I thought had long gone cold. "You sure about this?" I asked one more time. Chloe didn't even turn around. Dead sure. I left the kitchen and went upstairs. I didn't even feel angry anymore. I felt clear. Sharp. Like I was seeing my life through glass for the first time. When she said it, she thought she was being powerful. Throwing off shackles or some bullshit. What she didn't know, what she couldn't have known, was that I already had a name, a face, a memory. She gave me permission, and I intended to take it. You'd think the mind lets go of things over time. That it deletes what doesn't serve, like an old hard drive wiping itself clean. But some memories linger, sticky, stubborn things that refuse to fade no matter how many years pass. That night with Elena, it wasn't just a memory. It was a ghost. One that followed me silently through the halls of my marriage. Watching, whispering, waiting. I met her 7 years ago. Give or take a few months. I was 28, single, and trying to convince myself I cared about abstract art at some trendy downtown gallery opening. A friend had invited me. I can't even remember their name now, but I remember her. She was standing alone near a sculpture that looked like someone had melted a bicycle, wearing a dark green dress with a slit that went too high for modesty and just low enough for temptation. Her hair was in a loose twist, and there was a glass of red wine balanced between her fingers like it belonged there, like it was an accessory more than a drink. I remember wondering who she was there with. I assumed someone rich, someone older, someone with enough confidence to touch her in public without hesitation. But she wasn't with anyone. We started talking because I made some sarcastic comment about the sculpture, something dumb like, "I think it's supposed to be a metaphor for divorce." She laughed. It was this low, velvety sound, like she wasn't used to laughing at strangers' jokes, but let herself anyway. "You're not far off," she said. "The artist went through a nasty one last year. That piece is called Dismount." It went from there. I don't know how long we talked. An hour? 2. She told me her name was Elena. No last name. I didn't ask. She asked what I did for work, and I gave her the version that made me sound less boring. She asked if I had someone, and I said no. Then I asked if she did, and she said, "Sometimes." I still remember how she said it, like monogamy was a coat you wore depending on the weather. I didn't kiss her because I thought I could. I kissed her because everything about that night made me forget I shouldn't. The music was loud, the wine was strong, and she was so goddamn close. Her perfume smelled like something from another decade, floral but deep, not trendy. The kind of scent that got under your skin. It was brief, intense. Her lips were warm. Her hands clutched my shirt like she hadn't meant to respond, but couldn't stop herself. Then she broke it, pulled back, said, "This can't happen," and vanished into the crowd. I spent the rest of the night pretending I hadn't been wrecked by a single kiss. I even went home with someone else that night, someone who looked vaguely like her, which should have been my first clue that something was already broken in me. Fast forward 6 months. I met Chloe at a coffee shop. She was funny, bright-eyed, and her sarcasm came wrapped in soft smiles. We clicked. I didn't think about Elena again, not really, until that first Thanksgiving. She opened the door. My heart stopped. I froze with the bottle of red in my hand and a smile dying on my face. She was dressed like a proper hostess, a navy blouse, gold earrings, bare feet on hardwood. Her eyes locked on mine, and I saw it, the recognition, the panic, the memory crashing over her as fast and as violently as it had hit me. "Mom," Chloe had said, already halfway inside. "This is Mark." Elena didn't flinch. She was better at hiding things than I was. She extended her hand like nothing had ever happened. "Nice to meet you, Mark." I took her hand, and for a second, just one unbearable second, I felt it again. That pull, that dangerous, magnetic heat. We didn't say a word about it. That entire night, through dinner, dessert, wine, conversation, not one word. She smiled at me like I was new. I played along, but my heart wasn't fooled. Over the years, we became something. Not friends, not enemies, not even in-laws in the traditional sense. There was always this space between us, this unsaid thing that crackled beneath every shared glance. I watched her age gracefully. She watched me become a husband. We existed side by side in family photos, always careful, always measured. Then came Chloe's dare. "Be with anyone you want. I don't care." It sounded so flippant, so easy. But the second she said it, Elena's name detonated in my mind like a firecracker. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay next to Chloe, listening to the soft rhythm of her breath, staring at the ceiling, wondering what the hell was wrong with me. Why that memory, of all things? Why her? But I already knew. Because Elena was the fork in the road I never got to take. Because she was the forbidden moment that burned brighter than most of my actual relationships. Because I'd spent the last 7 years trying to forget her, which meant I never had. The next morning, I looked her up on social media. She barely posted. Just the occasional picture of her garden or a family photo. She hadn't aged much. Still had the same fire in her eyes. Still looked like she knew things she wasn't supposed to know. I shouldn't have messaged her. I know that, but I couldn't help myself. Me? I was thinking about that night at the gallery. No greeting. No explanation. She replied 2 hours later. Elena, that's dangerous. That was all she said. No emojis. No warmth. Just a warning. And God help me. That one line made my pulse spike like I was 28 again. I deleted the thread. For now. But something had shifted. Chloe didn't realize it, but she'd opened a door. One that had stayed shut for years out of duty and guilt and fear. Now the lock was gone. I didn't know what I was going to do. Not really. But I knew what I wanted. And the moment that truth settled in my chest, everything else in my life started to feel hollow. I told Chloe I was going to pick up the slow cooker from her parents' house. It wasn't a lie. Elena had texted into the family group chat that she'd found our old crock pot tucked behind some pantry baskets. Figured you'd want this before the holidays, she wrote. That was all the excuse I needed. I pulled into the driveway like I'd done dozens of times before, pretending my pulse wasn't racing, pretending this was just another ordinary drop-in. I saw her car parked in the garage and no sign of anyone else's. Her husband, Richard, was usually out golfing or at the gym this time of day. I took the front steps slower than I needed to, my hand hovering at the doorbell before I finally pressed it. It opened before it finished ringing. Elena. She wore a white, loose-knit sweater that slipped slightly off her shoulder, and her hair was down, thick waves cascading over her collarbone like she hadn't tried too hard, but still looked effortlessly her. She always had that look, that slightly undone elegance, like she belonged in a foreign movie you had to read subtitles for. Mark, she said softly, like she didn't expect me so soon. You texted about the crock pot, right? She smiled faintly and stepped aside to let me in. It's in the kitchen. The air inside the house was warmer than outside, filled with the faint scent of vanilla candles and something lemony. Her heels clicked softly against the tile as she walked ahead of me, and I had to tear my eyes away from the way her jeans hugged her hips. This wasn't about lust. Not just. This was about power, curiosity, temptation wrapped in familiarity. When I reached the kitchen, she was already pulling the crock pot from a low cabinet, the hem of her sweater rising just enough to give me a glimpse of skin at her back. She stood and set it gently on the counter. There you go. I didn't move to take it. I was too busy looking at her. You still remember that night, don't you? Her hands froze on the countertop. You're asking me that now? I stepped closer, not touching her. Just testing gravity. Chloe told me something the other day. Gave me permission. Her head turned, slowly. Her face was unreadable. To cheat. To explore. Elena, I paused, tongue dry. It never left me. That kiss. She let out a breath that was almost a laugh. Jesus, Mark. I didn't plan this. Yes, you did. Her voice was sharper now, but not angry. You knew Richard wouldn't be home. You knew Chloe wouldn't ask questions. You knew the crock pot was just a pretense. I didn't deny it. She turned and leaned against the counter, arms folded beneath her chest, her sweater clinging just a bit tighter now. And what exactly do you want from me? To know if you remember it like I do. She took a long, slow breath, eyes locked with mine. I remember what it felt like to forget who I was for 5 minutes. That sounds like a yes. I never said it wasn't. She pushed off the counter and walked past me toward the living room, slow, deliberate. But remembering something doesn't mean you act on it. I followed her. Then why aren't you telling me to leave? She stopped at the edge of the room, turning halfway, enough to let her eyes settle on mine. Because I don't want to. Her honesty cracked something wide open in me. She sat on the arm of the couch, one leg crossed, exposing a sliver of her thigh beneath the rip in her jeans. It was one night. A kiss. Years ago. You're married to my daughter now. And you're the one who kissed me first. Her lips curved upward. You kissed back. I took a step forward. If I kissed you now, would you stop me? She didn't answer. That was the answer. But I didn't kiss her. Not yet. Instead, I sat on the opposite couch, elbows on my knees, and stared at the floor. I know this is dangerous. I know it's messed up. But Chloe's different lately. Cold. Distant. Like I'm living with someone who used to be my wife, but isn't anymore. Elena was quiet for a while, then said, She's always been like that. You just loved her enough to miss the signs. I looked up. Her father's the same way, she added. Richard's emotionally efficient. Does what needs to be done. Performs when required. Then disappears into whatever interest he's chasing that week. She said I could sleep with someone else. Elena raised an eyebrow. Did she mean it? I don't think she thought I'd actually do it. Well then, she said, voice soft and dry as velvet. She underestimated you. We sat in silence for a minute. I'm not saying I want an affair, I said, but I can't lie to myself anymore. I've thought about you. Long before today. She walked over and stood in front of me. Not touching, not speaking, just close enough for me to inhale her again. That same perfume, that same maddening calm. Sometimes, she whispered, I wonder what would have happened if I hadn't walked away that night. I looked up at her. So do I. She leaned forward, slowly. Not to kiss me, just to brush her fingers across my jawline. A feather-light touch, like she was checking if I was real. Her wedding ring flashed under the light. So did mine. I should go, I said, standing quickly. Yes, she said, stepping back. I grabbed the crock pot and headed for the door without another word. She followed behind me, but didn't speak until I was halfway down the steps. Mark, I turned. She gave me a look I hadn't seen in 7 years. One that curled at the edge of her mouth, dangerous and promising. Next time, she said, don't bring a crock pot. Family dinners used to be easy, predictable. A rotating menu of roasted chicken, polite conversation, and the occasional political jab from Richard that Elena smoothed over with a sideways glance and a refill of wine. But tonight had a pulse. We were all there, Chloe, myself, her parents, even her younger brother Evan and his girlfriend. A full table, everyone passing dishes, pouring wine, pretending that nothing about this dinner was different from the hundreds before. Except it was. Because Elena hadn't stopped looking at me. Not in an obvious way, not overt stares, but glances that lingered 1 second too long. Fingertips that brushed mine when she passed the salad tongs. A smirk when Chloe interrupted me mid-sentence, the kind of smirk that said she saw things no one else could. It wasn't just in my head. It couldn't be. Not after what happened 3 days ago. The crock pot. The closeness. That moment on her couch when our lips were one breath away from meeting again. That thing between us. It was alive now, no longer buried beneath years of pretending. And the worst part? I didn't want to put it back. Mark, Richard said from the head of the table, you think the housing market's going to keep climbing into next year? I blinked, dragged myself back into the present. Depends who wins the election. Always does, he muttered. Chloe jumped in to redirect. We're actually thinking about refinancing. Maybe even doing the kitchen over next year. Elena's eyes flicked to mine as she sipped her wine. If you need help picking finishes, I still have the catalogs from our last renovation. Thanks, Mom, Chloe said, half smiling. But we've got it. That smile faded the moment her phone buzzed in her lap. She glanced down and typed out a quick reply beneath the tablecloth. I watched how detached she looked now. How distant she always seemed lately. The woman sitting beside me didn't even resemble the one I married 5 years ago. And Elena noticed it too. Later, after dessert, I stood in the kitchen rinsing wine glasses while the others gathered in the living room to watch some football game no one really cared about. I needed the space. The hum of running water was the only thing keeping me grounded. Elena. Her voice slid into the silence like silk. I turned. She stood in the doorway, backlit by the warm light from the hallway, arms folded loosely across her chest. Her blouse was pale ivory, loose-fitting, but tucked at the waist in a way that accented her curves. She walked in slowly, closing the door halfway behind her. I didn't get a chance to say thank you, she said. For what? For pretending. I leaned back against the sink. You're doing a pretty good job yourself. I've had more practice. We were only 3 feet apart now. Too close for small talk, too far for anything else. You didn't come back, she said. I didn't want to push. Elena tilted her head. You weren't pushing. I swallowed. Then why did I leave feeling like I'd already crossed a line? She smiled faintly. Because you did. My pulse kicked. And you're okay with that? She took a step forward. I haven't stopped thinking about that night since it happened. The gallery? She nodded. You think I didn't recognize you when Chloe brought you home? I did. I just didn't know what to do with it. And now? She hesitated, then said, now I want to stop pretending. I looked at her, really looked at her. The way her eyes shone when she was being honest. The way her lower lip tensed when she was scared of what she was saying. What are you suggesting? I asked, voice low. That we stop dancing around it, she said. If this happens, it needs to be intentional. Elena. No games, she said. No drunken mistake in the dark. If we're doing this, we both walked through the door with our eyes open. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, she reached into her back pocket and pulled out her phone. Tapped. Held it up to show me a message. Elena, need help fixing that drawer in the laundry room. You free this weekend? Send that to me. I said, breath shallow. Her thumb hit send. The message pinged on my phone seconds later. She stepped back toward the hallway, hand on the door. Saturday. Around 3? I nodded. Elena gave me one last look. That same dangerous smile she gave me all those years ago, just before disappearing into the crowd. Then she was gone. I stood there a full minute before I shut the water off. Saturday felt like a countdown from the second I woke up. I helped Chloe with groceries. Took the car in for an oil change. Pretended not to notice when she said she had brunch with a friend, the same friend, whose name had come up on her phone last week at 11:42 p.m. I didn't care. That wasn't bitterness. It was relief. At 2:55, I pulled into Elena's driveway. The house was quiet. Her car was parked neatly in its usual place. The curtains were drawn just slightly, like they'd been arranged to look like they weren't. She opened the door before I could knock. Laundry room, she said, her voice neutral. I followed her in. The drawer didn't need fixing. There wasn't even a drawer. Just her, standing in the middle of the room, arms at her sides, expression unreadable. No words. She walked toward me, slow and silent. When she reached me, she put her hands on my chest. Not grabbing, not pulling, just feeling, tracing the edge of my shirt with her fingers. You came, she said. I couldn't not. And then she kissed me. Not like before. Not soft or hesitant. This was hungry, honest. Like every second of restraint we'd shown over the years finally cracked and spilled over. Her hands moved under my shirt, pulling it upward. Mine slipped down to her hips, pulling her against me, hard and kneading. Clothes came off in a mess of cotton and denim. No slow undressing, no timid unveiling. Just skin, heat, her mouth on my throat, my fingers in her hair. The dryer was warm behind her. She leaned back against it, lips parting, legs curling around me. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because in that moment, we weren't in-laws. We weren't married people cheating on anyone. We were just two people reclaiming a fire that had never died. And the worst part? It felt right. The thing about crossing a line is you expect bells to go off. Guilt alarms. Red lights screaming in your head. Something to tell you you've stepped too far into the dark and that it's time to turn back. But that's not how it felt. Not even close. After Elena and I tore into each other in the laundry room, there was no sudden weight of remorse. No shame bubbling up. If anything, it felt like clarity. Like I had finally exhaled after holding my breath for 7 years. We didn't speak afterward. Not at first. She rested against me, naked but unashamed, her breathing slowing while her hand lazily traced a circle across my chest. My pants were bunched around one ankle. Her bra hung from a drying rack like some silent flag of surrender. I thought it would feel worse, she said finally, voice low. You regret it? No, she said instantly. That's the scary part. We got dressed in silence, slower this time. I watched her slide her sweater back on, smoothing it out with the kind of elegance that only comes from women who know exactly how dangerous they are. I tucked in my shirt, still buzzing from the way she tasted, the way she moaned my name, the way she whispered finally against my neck as we moved like two people starved of something essential. When I turned to her again, she was watching me with those heavy-lidded eyes, as if trying to decide what version of me she'd just welcomed inside her. You should go, she said not coldly, just practically. Yeah, I replied, but I didn't move. Mark, she said gently, if we're going to keep doing this, we need to be smart. I raised an eyebrow. You want to keep doing this? Her smirk was subtle, but it was there. Do you want to stop? No. Then we'll need rules. I stepped closer. We're already beyond rules. She smiled. That's exactly why we need them. Over the next few days, the world didn't fall apart. In fact, it carried on exactly as before, which somehow made it worse. Chloe didn't seem suspicious. If anything, she was more distant than usual, caught up in work or texting Sammy or Justine or some other contact name that had started to feel like a mask for whatever or whoever she was doing on the side. I didn't ask. I didn't want the hypocrisy of pretending I had a right to. I was back at her parents' house the following Thursday. Elena said she needed help bringing down boxes from the attic, Halloween decorations. I texted Chloe that her mom had asked for my help, and Chloe, in classic fashion, waved it off with a thumbs-up emoji and no further thought. When I arrived, Elena met me at the front door wearing yoga pants and a tank top that didn't try to hide how hard she'd been working on her body. Her hair was pulled back in a loose bun. No makeup. Still beautiful. The attic visit was a formality. We were up there less than 5 minutes. No boxes were brought down. Instead, we ended up in her bedroom. She locked the door this time. She pushed me back onto the bed and climbed on top without ceremony, pulling her top over her head as she straddled my thighs. "This is real now," she whispered. "I know. You can still walk away." I laughed under my breath. "You know I'm not going anywhere." Her hips lowered, and whatever words we might have said next melted between us. It wasn't soft. It wasn't romantic. It was raw, hungry. Months, years, of restraint breaking into something primal. She clung to me like I was the secret she'd protected too long. I gripped her waist like she was the answer to a question I never dared ask. When it was over, she curled beside me in the tangle of sheets, her fingers lightly dragging through my hair. "We're fucked," I said. "Oh, definitely." After that, we saw each other at least twice a week. Once under the excuse of errands. She'd text me to swing by for repairs or picking something up. The other times were more spontaneous. Riskier. A shared look at a family gathering. A brush of the hand. A text late at night that simply read. Now, I started making excuses to Chloe. She didn't ask too many questions. She was too busy with her own half-life to notice that mine was unraveling. But when Elena touched me, when she pulled me into that space where only she and I existed, it felt like I was real again. Like all the gray that had seeped into my marriage, my routine, my day-to-day life, just vanished. And it wasn't just sex. It was the way she looked at me when I spoke, like my words meant something. The way she touched my arm when I passed, not needing a reason. The way she kissed my fingertips like she had always been waiting to have them back. We had become experts in stolen time. In whispers behind doors. In silences heavy with implication. Even the tension during family dinners had evolved. Chloe would talk, and I'd nod. But across the table, Elena's leg would brush mine beneath the cloth, and my stomach would knot with that maddening mix of anticipation and danger. One night, we all sat around playing cards, something her family hadn't done in ages. Chloe and Richard were on one team. Elena and I were on the other. "Just for fun," she said. Every time I placed a card down, she'd lean closer. Her hand would rest on my thigh under the table. Her breath would tickle my ear when she leaned in to whisper her next move. Chloe didn't notice. Or maybe she didn't care. But I cared. Too much. I couldn't stop wanting her. Not just her body, though that alone was enough to drive me crazy, but her. Elena. The version of her I met before I even knew Chloe existed. The woman who had stirred something in me that no one else ever had. Now I was living a double life. By day, I was the dutiful husband. I took out the trash, paid the bills, made dinner reservations. By night, I was the man Elena called when she needed to feel again. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this couldn't last forever. We were playing with fire. But God, the warmth of it felt better than anything I'd felt in years. I used to believe cheating was a clean break. A single, jagged moment. A bed, a body, a betrayal, followed by guilt, confession, and chaos. But that's not what this is. This isn't a one-night mistake. This is slow. This is steady. This is living two lives at once and pretending neither one is killing me. By day, I'm Mark, the husband. The quiet man sitting beside Chloe at dinner while she half listens to me talk about work and taps her phone under the table. The guy who picks up the dry cleaning, takes the trash out on Thursdays, and folds the laundry without being asked. By night, I'm someone else. The man Elena waits for. The one who makes her moan into pillows and cling to the edges of her bed like the world outside no longer matters. With her, I'm seen. I'm touched. I'm wanted. And God help me, I've started to need that more than I need anything else. The first few weeks after we crossed that line were a blur of excuses and half-lies. I started hitting the gym again, or so Chloe thinks. "Glad you're taking care of yourself," she told me one night, eyes still on her phone. "Your arms look good lately." I thanked her, pretending I hadn't just spent 2 hours in her mother's bed, buried between her thighs, hearing her tell me the same thing. Only with more breathlessness, more sincerity, more tone. Every time I left Elena's house, I told myself it would be the last time. Every time, I found myself back there. Sometimes, I didn't even need a reason. I'd be driving near their neighborhood, and without thinking, I'd turn onto their street. She never questioned it. She'd just opened the door like she'd been expecting me all along. And maybe she had. We learned each other's rhythms again, like second nature. I could tell when she was stressed before she said a word. The slight twitch of her jaw, the clipped tone of her texts. She could read the tension in my shoulders with one glance, knew exactly when to pull me down on top of her and strip the world away. We stole time like addicts. 5-minute touches behind closed doors. 15 minutes in the back of her SUV at a nature trail parking lot. Once, during a Sunday family barbecue, she whispered in my ear that she wasn't wearing panties under her sundress. I nearly dropped the plate of ribs I was holding. I got bolder. Reckless, even. We fucked in her husband's office once. A quick, dangerous tryst that ended with her sitting on the edge of his desk, skirt rucked up, hair messy, breath shallow. "You're playing with fire," she said afterward. "Then you shouldn't taste so good when you burn." Elena didn't laugh. She just pulled me back in and kissed me harder. At home, things with Chloe were easier, strangely. She was so wrapped up in her own distractions, the gym, her friends, her sudden desire to take solo weekend trips, that she barely noticed the shift in me. We stopped fighting. We also stopped having sex. If she noticed, she didn't say a word. There were moments, late at night, when I'd lie awake beside her and wonder if we were both doing the same thing. If she was dreaming about someone else. If the silence between us had always been there, and we just filled it with routine. Or maybe we were both cowards. It wasn't all lust with Elena. That's what scared me most. I started learning the details again. The way she put cinnamon in her coffee, the way her eyes crinkled when she laughed too hard, the way she bit her thumb when she was reading something intense. One afternoon, I found one of her scarves left in my car, the soft gray one with the scent of her still clinging to the fabric. I didn't return it. I kept it. In the glove box. Like a secret. Like a token. Maybe I needed proof it was real. Then came Evan's birthday dinner. A family affair. Chloe's entire side. The kind of thing I used to endure with practiced smiles and strategic bathroom breaks. But now I watched Elena from across the table like a man watching the edge of a blade. Sharp, beautiful, dangerous. She wore black. Modest. Elegant. But beneath it, I knew what she looked like. Knew the birthmark on her thigh, the exact sound she made when she came, the way her legs trembled when I pressed inside her slow and deep. We were sitting across from each other, boxed in by family chatter and wine glasses, and still, even then, the heat between us burned. She didn't say much that night, but she watched me, quietly, possessively. At one point, Chloe reached across and touched my hand. "You good?" she asked, smiling. "You've been quiet." "I'm fine," I said. Elena's foot slid across my ankle under the table. I flinched. Chloe didn't notice. Of course she didn't. Later that week, I stopped by Elena's house to return a tool Richard let me borrow. She opened the door in a robe, her hair damp from a shower, skin still glowing from steam. I didn't even make it past the hallway. She pulled me in, shut the door, and kissed me like we were at war. Afterward, we lay tangled on the couch, still half-clothed. "We need to slow down," she said, breathless. I didn't respond. "I'm serious." "So am I. Mark." She turned her face toward mine. "This can't stay hidden forever." I nodded. "I know. We need to be ready." I looked at her, heart thudding. For what? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Because we both knew. We weren't just having an affair. We were falling into something we couldn't crawl out of. And eventually, someone, Chloe, Richard, someone, was going to smell the smoke. The only question was whether we'd stop before we burned it all down. It started with lipstick. Not Chloe's shade. Chloe doesn't wear that deep plum red, the one that leaves marks impossible to forget. She prefers gloss, light pinks, things that sparkle. But the smudge I found on my collar that Wednesday morning as I buttoned up for work, it was Elena's color. I stared at it like it was a crime scene, my brain slow to catch up with the implications. I must have missed it the night before when I'd left her house in a rush, high on adrenaline and still tasting her on my lips. We'd kissed hard against the door as I left. Too hard. That mark was proof. I was sloppy. I changed shirts, shoved the stained one into the bottom of the hamper, and told myself to be more careful. But that was only the beginning. The next mistake came 2 days later, the perfume. Not Chloe's. Elena's. A richer, deeper scent, almost musky, with notes of sandalwood and something floral I could never quite place. I'd showered, of course. I always did. But perfume lingers in places you forget to check, behind the ears, inside jacket collars, even the leather seats of your car. Chloe wrinkled her nose when I kissed her goodbye. New cologne? She asked. Something they sprayed at work? I lied quickly. Client gift sets. You know the type. She nodded, but her brows furrowed slightly, and the moment sat there between us, unnoticed by her for now, but etched into the record of every little suspicion waiting to add up later. I brushed it off, but Elena noticed too. You're distracted, she whispered one afternoon while we lay tangled in her sheets, my head resting on her bare stomach. I've been distracted since the day we started this. She ran her fingers through my hair, thoughtful. She's going to figure it out eventually. I know. She's not stupid. She hasn't asked a single question, I said, lifting my head. If anything, she's more checked out than I am. Maybe because she's doing the same thing you are. That thought had crossed my mind more than once. Chloe's phone habits, her sudden weekends away, the shift in her sex drive, or lack of one. But something about Elena saying it out loud felt different. Like getting permission to stop caring. I wouldn't be surprised, I muttered. Would it make you feel better? She asked. No, just less guilty. She kissed my forehead. I stopped feeling guilty the day you touched me again. Then came the dinner party. Our neighbor, Rachel, was celebrating her promotion and invited a handful of couples from the block. Chloe insisted we go. It'll be fun, she said, already texting with Sammy or Justine or whoever to see what dress she should wear. I almost told her no. I almost faked a stomach ache or made up a work thing. But instead, I put on the dark blue shirt she liked and let her fix my collar like we were still the couple people assumed we were. When we walked into the house, guess who was already there? Elena. Not with Richard. With a friend of hers from her garden club. A woman named Meredith who had the kind of face that begged not to be the center of attention. Elena looked flawless, of course. Black dress, bare shoulders, heels that made her taller than I remembered. Her eyes found mine within seconds. There was a flicker of surprise. Then heat. Then warning. I kept my distance. So did she. But the room wasn't big enough for either of us to pretend the tension wasn't real. Every time I looked up, she was looking back. Every conversation I had with someone else felt like background noise compared to the weight of her gaze. At one point, Chloe leaned into me and whispered, "Why is my mom looking at you like that?" I froze. Like what? She smirked, teasing, like she's plotting something. I laughed it off. That's just her face. But inside, my stomach sank. She'd noticed. Even if only for a second, she noticed. The final straw was stupid. A slip of the tongue. The kind that doesn't register until it's already out of your mouth. We were at dinner, just me and Chloe. One of those rare nights where she wasn't busy and I wasn't inventing errands. We were eating Thai food on the couch, some show playing in the background neither of us were really watching. She mentioned a family trip, something about maybe going to the lake house for a weekend. It might be nice to spend time with my mom, she said. We haven't done that in a while. I didn't think. I said, she likes spring weekends. Early May. The dogwoods bloom then. Chloe paused. How do you know that? I looked at her. Fork midair. I think she mentioned it once. I lied. She did. Her brow furrowed. To you? I nodded, but it was too late. The damage was done. It wasn't what I said. It was how I said it. Too naturally, too intimately. Like a detail I hadn't just heard but lived. She didn't say anything else about it. Just turned back to the TV. But I saw the way she glanced at me out of the corner of her eye when she thought I wasn't looking. And that night, when we got in bed, she didn't reach for me. She turned off her lamp and faced the wall. The next morning, I texted Elena. Me. We're slipping. Elena. I know. Me. We need to slow down. Elena. Do you want to? I stared at the screen for a long time. Finally, I typed. Me, no. She didn't respond after that. She didn't have to. Because the truth is, once you cross a line, there's no going back to where you started. There's only forward. Deeper. Riskier. And we were already too far in to pretend we didn't like it there. She cornered me in the kitchen. No warning. No build-up. Just walked in one night after work, dropped her bag on the counter, and said, "Who is she?" I froze, halfway through pouring a glass of water. My hand didn't even shake, not at first. My body went still in that ancient way predators do when they've been spotted. I turned around slowly. What? Chloe stood there, arms crossed, eyes locked on me like she'd rehearsed this moment in the mirror. There was no hysteria, no raised voice, just a terrifying calm. I said, she repeated, who is she? I looked her in the eyes and did the only thing I could think of. I lied. There's no one. Her jaw clenched. Don't do that. I'm not. Don't insult me, Mark. The glass in my hand felt too full suddenly. Heavy, like it was exposing me by existing. I set it down gently on the counter. I don't know what you're talking about. Chloe walked closer. Her voice dropped lower. You've been different for months. Distant. Secretive. You think I don't notice? You think I don't hear you coming in late? Or smell the perfume that isn't mine on your clothes? She was trembling now, just slightly. A vibration under the skin, like a wire pulled too tight. You don't touch me anymore, she added. You barely look at me. But you've been looking. I see it in your eyes. I couldn't speak. I knew if I did, it would all come out. Every lie, every detail, every moan and whispered name and hand dug into my back. She shook her head. Tell me the truth, Mark. I deserve that much. I could have said it. Could have told her it started with a dare, her dare, and spiraled into something neither of us could stop. That it wasn't just sex, it was comfort, intimacy, a return to something I'd lost long before we even married. But I didn't, because the truth was too big, too brutal, too close to home. Instead, I said, I'm not cheating. And even as I said it, I knew how it sounded. Her eyes glossed. Not from tears, not yet, but from disbelief. From rage kept barely in check. From knowing she'd caught me and realizing I still wouldn't admit it. She stepped back like I'd slapped her. Okay, she said softly. So we're doing this. Chloe, she held up her hand. Don't. If you won't give me the truth, don't give me anything. Then she turned and walked out of the kitchen. That night, she slept in the guest room. She didn't slam the door. She didn't cry. She just vanished into the other half of the house like a shadow. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, her words looping in my head. You don't touch me anymore. She was right. I hadn't. Because my body, my heart, my need, had gone somewhere else. Into someone else. And now the boundary between my two lives was breaking. The next day, I texted Elena. Me. She knows. Not everything. But enough. Elena, what did you say? Me. I lied. She didn't respond right away. A few minutes later, 3 dots appeared. Then disappeared. Finally. Elena. Come over. We need to talk. When I arrived, the house was quiet. Her car was in the driveway, but Richard's wasn't. She opened the door in jeans and a soft, oversized sweater. No makeup, hair tied up like she hadn't slept. We didn't kiss. We sat in the living room, apart. No lingering looks. No playful banter. Just silence. Heavy and loaded. She asked, I said. Straight up. And you denied it. I had to. Elena sighed, rubbing her temples. She's not stupid. I know. She'll start watching you. Watching us. My mouth went dry. Do you want to stop? She looked at me, eyes hard. Do you? I didn't answer. She nodded, almost to herself. Then no. We sat in that moment, the full weight of it between us. She's going to figure it out, I whispered. Elena's voice was colder now. Then we'll need to be smarter. More careful. She's already suspicious. Then stop giving her reasons to be. I stood up, agitated. This isn't sustainable. No, it's not, she said, finally standing too. But neither was pretending we didn't want this. The way she looked at me then, all fire and pain and stubborn defiance. I saw something break behind her eyes. We're in too deep, she said. I know. And I'm not walking away again. We didn't have sex that day. We kissed. Briefly. Softly. But it wasn't about lust anymore. It was about stakes. The tension between us had changed. No longer just forbidden, now dangerous. We were no longer just hiding. We were being hunted. That night, Chloe didn't come home. She texted around 11 p.m., staying at Justine's. Need space. I stared at the message like it was written in a language I used to understand. She never stayed out. Not without warning. Not without telling me where, when, why. This was the first move in a different kind of game. One where she didn't have to tell me anything, because I had already broken the rules. And maybe she wasn't staying at Justine's. Maybe she was staying with him. Whoever he was. Maybe we were finally becoming honest in the most dishonest way. The next morning, Elena texted. Elena, I had a dream last night. About that night in the gallery. Me, what happened in the dream? Elena, you kissed me again. But this time you didn't let go. My hands hovered over the screen. I didn't know what to write back. Because she wasn't talking about dreams. She was talking about now. About the reality we'd created. And the reality was simple. My wife knew something was wrong. She just didn't know the truth. Not yet. But she would. And when that day came, nothing would ever be the same again. It happened on a Wednesday. Not a birthday, not an anniversary, not a significant date on the calendar. Just a Wednesday. The kind of day you'd never remember unless something catastrophic happened. And something did. Chloe came home early. I'd gotten used to our patterns. Her late evenings, spontaneous girls' nights, her slowly growing distance. I thought I had the rhythm of it all down. I thought I had control. That afternoon, I was supposed to be at Elena's. She'd texted me earlier in the week. Elena, Richard's out. Come by. 2:30. We weren't being cautious anymore. Not really. We were dancing on the edge. If anyone had been paying attention, really paying attention, they'd have seen it. But no one had. Not until that day. I let myself into the house like usual. The spare key under the planter hadn't moved in years. The sun filtered through the blinds in soft slits. Everything smelled like her, jasmine, old wood, and the faint trace of the perfume I now associated only with sin. She was in the kitchen when I arrived, barefoot, wine already poured, wearing a soft gray dress I'd never seen before. You're late, she teased. I kissed her before answering. We didn't make it to the bedroom. We barely made it past the kitchen island. The room was warm with us, the kind of warmth that comes from friction, mouths against skin, desperate hands and gasping breaths. Her dress pushed up, my shirt undone, one of her legs wrapped around me, guiding, inviting, welcoming. We weren't quiet. We never were. It was just before the peak, just before everything blurred into pure sensation, when it happened. The front door opened. A key. The sound unmistakable. Then the voice. Mom. My entire body locked up. Elena froze beneath me. Then footsteps. And then, just as my heart tried to crawl out of my chest, Chloe appeared at the edge of the kitchen hallway, her purse still slung over her shoulder, mouth already open as she turned the corner and stopped. The silence was nuclear. She didn't scream. She didn't drop anything. She just stared. I stumbled back from Elena, pulling my pants up in a panic. Elena adjusted her dress, her face pale but composed, lips parted like she was still forming the words to explain. Chloe's eyes darted between us. My belt, her mother's hair, the flushed skin, the unmade room. She understood everything. All at once. Oh my God, she whispered. Chloe, I started, but I didn't even know what I was trying to say. She backed up a step. No. Elena and I, my voice cracked. Don't, she snapped. Her voice had never sounded like that before. It was raw, gutted. I didn't plan this, I said. Her eyes burned into me. How long? I couldn't lie anymore. Months. She turned to her mother. You knew he was married. To me. Elena stood straight, her voice quiet but firm. It started long before you came into the picture. What the hell does that even mean? I stepped toward her. Chloe, please. Don't touch me. Her voice broke on the last word, and that hit harder than any slap. I stopped. The room felt like a vacuum. She turned to her mother again, this time shaking. You're my mother. How could you? I never meant to hurt you, Elena said. You slept with my husband. Silence. No denial. Just silence. Chloe took another step back. Her expression wasn't just pain, it was betrayal. Not confusion, not disbelief. It was understanding layered in horror. I thought you were cheating, she said, laughing bitterly. But with someone else. Not, she swallowed. Not her. Chloe, Elena tried to reach for her. She flinched away. Don't. Just don't. She turned and walked out of the house. I didn't follow. I couldn't. The silence afterward was crushing. Elena sat on a stool by the island, face in her hands, her hair falling forward like a curtain. She knows, I said finally. She saw. She corrected. I sat across from her. The kitchen was still full of us. The wine, the scent, the ruin. Do you think she'll tell Richard? I asked. I don't know. Neither of us moved for a long time. Eventually, I stood up and buttoned my shirt properly. My hands were still shaking. This is it, I said. I know. I looked at her. We're not going to come back from this. No, she whispered. We're not. Chloe didn't come home that night. She didn't text. Didn't call. Her car wasn't in the driveway. Her location was off. Her friends didn't respond when I reached out. It was like she disappeared. But she hadn't. She was just done. The next morning, Richard showed up at my front door. I opened it, heart pounding. He didn't speak, just stared at me. And then, without a word, he punched me in the face. Hard. I stumbled back against the doorframe, tasting blood. You touched my wife, he said, voice like stone. I didn't deny it. I didn't fight back. I just wiped my mouth and nodded. Yeah, I said. I did. His jaw clenched. You destroyed my daughter. I wanted to say she wasn't innocent, that she had her own secrets, that this marriage had been breaking long before Elena touched me again. But I didn't, because none of that would make a difference now. He left without another word. I didn't see Chloe for 3 days. Then, a lawyer called. She'd filed for divorce. No mediation, no discussion, just a list of assets and a recommendation to keep communications minimal. I signed the papers without reading most of it. Elena and I didn't speak for a while, not out of anger, but because there was nothing left to say. Everything was out. Every secret, every touch, every lie. We hadn't just detonated a marriage. We destroyed a family. And now we were standing in the wreckage. Alone. I wish I could say the dust settled quickly. But it didn't. It hovered, thick and heavy, clinging to everything. Every room, every conversation, every silent moment where the phone didn't ring. All of it was soaked in the aftershock of what I'd done. Chloe was gone. Not just physically. She had erased herself from my life like a glitch in a system. Moved into a temporary apartment. Blocked me on social media. Changed her number. Her lawyer acted as the go-between, cold and mechanical. Every message boiled down to one thing. We're done. Her silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. I walked through our house like a stranger. Her coat no longer hung by the door. Her perfume didn't linger in the bathroom. The toothbrush she once left beside mine had vanished without ceremony. You think, when the truth comes out, you'll feel some kind of relief, like at least you're no longer lying. But all I felt was emptiness. And shame. The irony was cruel. Chloe had given me permission, hadn't she? That stupid smirk, the dare. Be with anyone you want, I don't care. I'd taken it literally. Or maybe I'd just been waiting for a reason to do what I already wanted. But the truth? That line wasn't permission. It was a test. And I failed it completely. Elena wasn't faring much better. Richard kicked her out the night after he punched me. Said nothing. Just opened the door, suitcase in hand, and told her to be gone by midnight. No screaming. No begging. No arguments. He didn't need them. His silence was punishment enough. She moved into a small townhouse on the other side of the city. No decorations. No warmth. Just walls and space and solitude. I visited her once a week. Sometimes more. Sometimes less. We didn't always sleep together. In fact, there were days we didn't even kiss. Mostly, we just existed, together but apart, two broken people sitting on a couch too big for how small we felt. I talked to Evan, she said one night, curled against me with a glass of wine in hand. How'd that go? She laughed once, bitter and quiet. He called me a homewrecker. I winced. He's not wrong. I know. We sat in the silence that followed, both too tired to argue with reality. My daughter won't speak to me, she added. My husband wants to erase me. My family won't invite me to anything without asking if you'll be there. She looked up at me, but I still don't regret it. I met her gaze. Neither do I. That was the thing, the strange, awful truth buried beneath all of it. The wreckage was real. The pain was real. But so was this. Her. Us. The connection that sparked long before Chloe ever walked into my life. That kiss in the back of that gallery, the stolen glances years later, the slow pull towards something we both denied for too long. It wasn't an affair. It was unfinished business. But love doesn't erase consequences. The world we lived in was scorched earth now. Richard filed for divorce. Took the house. The cars. The reputation. Chloe told her friends everything. Her version, at least. I was the predator. Elena was the traitor. No one asked for context. No one wanted details. They wanted clean villains, and we gave them plenty to work with. I bumped into Chloe once at a grocery store. We didn't speak. She looked at me, expression unreadable, then turned away like I was no one. I almost called out to her, almost asked if she was okay. But what would I even say? That I was sorry? I was. but not in the way she wanted. Not for loving Elena, but for lying about it. For pretending I could live a life with one woman while longing for another. Eventually, Elena and I stopped pretending too. We stopped tiptoeing around the idea of what we were. We started seeing each other in public. Small things. A movie. Coffee. Dinner. People stared. Whispered. Some even confronted us. One night, at a quiet restaurant, a woman I didn't recognize walked by our table, paused, and muttered, "Disgusting." Elena flinched. I reached for her hand. "We don't owe anyone anything." She didn't respond. Just gripped my fingers tighter. After that night, we had a long talk. The kind that pulls all the hidden pieces into the light. "I want to move away," she said. "Start over. Somewhere new." I nodded slowly. "With me?" "Yes." I sat back, heart pounding. "Are you sure?" Her eyes met mine. "I'm not losing you again." We started looking at cities. Coastal towns. Small apartments. Places without history. Places without her. And even though we never said it out loud, we both knew what we were doing. Not escaping the guilt, but choosing the life we'd always wanted. The one we'd buried beneath years of playing roles we were never meant to play. I wasn't Chloe's husband anymore. She wasn't Richard's wife. We were just us. Finally, one night, as we packed her books into boxes, she sat on the floor beside me and said, "Do you think we'll ever be forgiven?" I thought about it. About Chloe, Richard, Evan, the friends we lost, the bridges we burned. "No," I said, "but I don't think that matters." She rested her head on my shoulder. "You still dream about that first night. Every day." She smiled softly. "So do I." We stayed like that for a while, surrounded by cardboard and silence and possibility. Because in the end, the fallout hadn't destroyed us. It had revealed us. And now there was only one choice left to make. We didn't tell anyone we were leaving. No goodbye party. No teary announcements. Just two names disappearing from a neighborhood, from a family, from a life that never really belonged to us. The moving truck came at sunrise. The street was still quiet. Elena's belongings were packed tightly in labeled boxes: kitchen, bedroom, office. Mine took up barely a corner of the truck. Clothes. A few books. Some old records Chloe never liked. I stood on her porch one last time, looking out at the cul-de-sac. The place I used to pull into every Sunday afternoon for dinners I didn't want to attend. The place where this all started. Elena came out holding 2 mugs of coffee. She handed me one, then leaned into the railing beside me. "I think this is the first time I've felt peace in this house," she said. "Because we're leaving?" She smiled, slow and tired. "Because we're choosing to." That word, choosing, stayed with me the entire drive out of town. Because that's what it all came down to in the end. Not a mistake. Not a fling. Not lust. But a choice. We could have stopped 1,000 times. And we didn't. We could have denied what we were. What we wanted. What we meant to each other. But we didn't. So yes, the pain that followed was ours to own. But so was the freedom. We moved into a modest apartment a few hours south of where we'd lived. Close enough to be reachable. Far enough to disappear. The space was small, 1 bedroom, an open living room, white walls, thin carpets. But it was ours. There were no ghosts here. No anniversaries. No reminders of what we'd destroyed to get here. Just quiet. Just possibility. Elena painted the walls within the first week. Soft grays. Deep blues. She filled the shelves with books again. She hung paintings she'd stored away for years, waiting for a place she could make her own. I watched her come back to life in that apartment. And I felt myself returning too. We cooked together. We laughed again. We fought sometimes, too. But it was the kind of fighting that came with honesty, not resentment. There was no pretending anymore. That was the beauty of it. And yet, even peace has its price. Chloe never spoke to me again. Not after the divorce. Not after the papers were finalized. Not even when I tried to send one last message. A letter, handwritten, left unanswered. She didn't have to read it. She didn't owe me anything. But part of me still wrote it for myself. Because despite everything, I had loved her once. Maybe not as deeply or completely as she needed. But I had loved her. She deserved better than what I became. Her mother, though? She knew all of me. Every selfish part. Every mistake. Every lie. And she chose me anyway. That was what I hadn't expected. I thought, once the dust settled, once the fantasy wore off, we'd crash into reality. She'd wake up one morning and see me not as the man she'd longed for, but the man who'd helped burn her life down. But she didn't flinch. She stayed. One night, months after we'd settled into our new place, I asked her, "Do you ever wish we'd stopped?" She looked up from her book and studied me for a long moment. Stopped what? Everything. That day in the laundry room. The kiss before Chloe and I ever met. Do you ever wish we never crossed that line? She closed her book gently and set it aside. No, she said. Not even to keep your family intact. That family was built on pretending. On pretending Richard and I were happy. Pretending you and Chloe were solid. On ignoring the things we didn't want to confront. She reached across the couch and took my hand. I'm not pretending anymore. I nodded. Neither was I. Still, I knew what the world would always think of us. The man who slept with his mother-in-law. The woman who betrayed her daughter. You don't come back from that. Not publicly. Not socially. But in the privacy of our quiet home, we weren't monsters. We weren't villains. We were just two people who made choices, selfish, yes. Human, definitely. We hurt people. People we once loved. That weight never left us. But we also found each other again. And we refused to waste it this time. There's one more moment I think about often. It happened 6 months after we moved. I was walking down to the mailbox when I saw a woman standing at the end of the street near the coffee shop. Dark sunglasses. A gray coat. It was Chloe. Or maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was someone who looked just enough like her to send my heart racing. She didn't look at me. She turned the corner before I could say anything. Disappeared. But for those few seconds, I wondered if she'd followed the breadcrumbs. If she'd needed to see what we had become. I never told Elena. Because whether it was Chloe or not didn't matter. That part of my life was over. And she had made her choice too. She chose to walk away. And I chose Elena. The world never forgave us. But we forgave ourselves. Not because we deserved it. But because we had to. Because love like this, broken, bruised, and bathed in fire, doesn't come twice. And if it does, you don't let it go again.